Hello everyone, welcome to astrologynewsreport.com. Today is August 3rd, 2014.
Presenting an alternate view of world events as seen through the lens of Vedic astrology.
I'm Ron Berger.
And I'm David Anton Savage. Let's take a look at the week that was.
As Mars gets closer to Saturn, the energy of crisis intensifies. Neither the bombardment of Gaza nor the fighting in Ukraine showed any signs of easing last week. Rather, both sides in both conflicts were further hardening their positions.
Do the planets indicate any relief? Is there any indication of an end to the strife? Yes, Venus is the planet of compromise and agreement, as well as harmony. As we have been reporting, Venus is being heavily influenced by the Mars-Saturn conjunction taking place in Venus' sign of Libra. Every time they call a ceasefire, it gets broken, usually within hours. Furthermore, the chart of Israel confirms this.
Mars is the planet of war. A change in Mars's status would promise something. Mars breaks away from Saturn when it enters Scorpio, which will be on September 4th.
Are you saying there'll be another whole month of conflict? Is there nothing more hopeful before that?
Well, there might be some lull in the fighting when Venus joins up with Jupiter, but we can't expect too much because, once again, Venus is still pulling in the energy of the Mars-Saturn conjunction until Mars gets out of Libra.
Well, we'll be addressing this in more detail in Part 3 of this week's report.
Meanwhile, Ketu, joining up with Uranus in Pisces a few weeks ago, is showing some results. This puts two significators of sudden events together in a water sign, a sure indication of problems via the water element. Unfortunately, this planetary combination continues for over a year.
Last week, we got a harbinger of things to come when a major water main running under Los Angeles' famed Sunset Boulevard broke, creating a huge crater in that major thoroughfare and sending millions and millions of gallons of water onto the adjoining campus of UCLA.
Another angle on this, a couple of days later, on the other side of the world, another street blew up. This one was in the city of Kaohsiung, Taiwan. 25 people died in that one, and hundreds were injured. The explosion was evidently caused by a leaking gas line.
This is interesting. Mars is the planet of accidents, and it is conjunct Saturn, the planet of structure. And in this case, we're talking about infrastructure. So now there are two planetary combinations getting more exact as the weeks go by, and both of them are indicators of bad Buddha.
Right. Another totally different signification of Ketu plus Uranus is that Ketu indicates the unseen world, which includes viruses. Uranus causes disruption and shocking events.
And of course, Mars and Saturn indicates crisis. Things are getting out of hand. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa, which has been brewing for months now, reached crisis proportions last week, with over 700 now dead and many, many more potentially to be infected.
Airport travel has been restricted, schools have been shut down, and in some cases, whole towns are quarantined. Sierra Leone has declared a state of emergency and called in troops to keep people isolated.
Ebola is a super scary hemorrhagic fever that kills up to 90% of those infected, and it is highly contagious. Healthcare workers are not safe. Several have even contracted the disease and died, including a leading doctor in the field of Ebola treatment.
Yes, David, and when we see that Mars is getting ever closer to Saturn and Ketu is getting ever closer to Uranus, does not bode well for where this particular crisis is heading.
And in another totally different health incident, the city of Toledo, Ohio, population 400,000, has discovered that its water is toxic. You can't drink it, and you can't bathe in it. The toxicity is evidently produced by an algae growing in Lake Erie. The governor has declared a state of emergency.
Once again, Ketu is the unseen world, and Uranus is the unexpected and disruptive events, both together in the water sign Pisces.
All right, moving on to Jupiter. Jupiter was combust all last week. This is generally bad for Jupiter's significations, which range from wisdom and morality to the more mundane signification of prosperity.
Last week, prosperity was in danger due to the European Union members' action of imposing serious sanctions on Russia as a way to get Russia to back off from its involvement with the fighting in Ukraine.
The consequences of this move can grow in more directions than seems at first apparent, due to so many global corporations having their fingers in the Russian pie. The energy and finance sectors are most susceptible, not only to the EU sanctions, but also to the potential for a Russian retaliation.
Jupiter is the significator of banks and bonds, and it is this part of the financial sector that was primed for taking a hit due to the interconnectedness of the global financial system. Venus is the planet of value and cost. Uranus interacting with Venus indicates sudden change of value.
Last week, markets plunged, chalking up their biggest weekly loss for the year so far, and Argentina defaulted on the payment of its debt for the second time in 13 years.
And finally, last week, the House of Representatives voted to authorize Speaker Johnny Boehner to go ahead and sue the president. A rather unusual action, to say the least.
It's historical. Actually, it hasn't been done before.
The reason being that Obama misused his executive powers when he delayed for 1 year the employer mandate provision of the Affordable Care Act, a move that, at the time, the Republicans supported.
Okay, so this is purely a Republican thing, and not in any way normal procedure, which makes me think Uranus has something to do with it.
Okay, why don't you take a swing at the analysis then?
Going to the USA chart, we see that Uranus, the planet of the unusual, is transiting in the 4th house, the house of the opposition party, that being the Republicans.
And Uranus has just recently been joined by Ketu, the indicator of past karma and a significator of chaos.
So I see this is an opening act of what we can expect from the GOP over the coming year. Unusual, chaotic behavior, disconnected from reality, insanity, extremism, wing nuttage supreme.
Sounds like a dessert. And so we conclude this week's Review of the Week. You can get daily updates by following us on Twitter at Astro News Report.
Be sure to click in with us next week.